Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wondered why you struggle with money despite the law of attraction and guest after guest, then do we have the worthy show for you. Today I'll be talking with Nancy Levin, recovering superwoman and the best-selling author of an amazing book at Taking the Leap, Jump, and Your Life Will Appear, and a book so incredibly worthy of praise and filled with guidance I'm blown away called Worthy. And that's just what we'll be talking about today, about how to boost your self-worth to grow your net worth. That plus we'll talk about superwomanitis, banking by prayer, when to watch Nashville, spending in Chanel suits, resistance in the 401k, 3 years without a car, Talenti sea salt caramel gelato, and the power of Donna Karan's Urban Zen. Gotcha. So welcome to the show, Nancy. Are you ready to shine?
I am, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Before we dive right into things, I'm almost afraid to ask, but can you tell us about Wayne Dyer and the briefcase?
It's a great story. So I spent many a year traveling around this great wide world with Wayne Dyer. And we were on tour. This was probably, I think it was like 2008. Mm-hmm. We were on tour and had an event. So this was back when I was the event director at Hay House. I should say for the listeners who don't know that piece. I was the event director at Hay House for 12 years. And so I produced all of our live events all around the world and traveled with all of our authors as well. So I was producing two events with Wayne. One was in Atlanta on a Saturday afternoon, and one was in Detroit on a Sunday afternoon. Mm-hmm. And we finished the event in Atlanta on Saturday. And the 10 of us who were on tour together, my staff, Wayne's daughter, Wayne's manager, the 10 of us load into this van, go to the airport, get on the plane. We all fly to Detroit. And we have dinner, we go to our respective rooms, ready to go to bed. I get a call from Wayne saying, I can't find my briefcase. So it's Saturday night about 10 o'clock in Detroit.
And this has all his notes, his prep stuff, his new book even.
Everything. All of his notes, his prep for the workshop, for the lecture, the new book he's been working on. It's got some money in it. It's got some personal items. And he absolutely is beside himself that he needs this briefcase. Cannot go on stage tomorrow without this briefcase. Nancy, you have to help me. So exactly. So as you said, at that time I was not a recovering superwoman. I was superwoman. And if anything needed to happen, I could make it happen. So I found myself first on the phone with my travel agent who was in California. So that made, the time difference made it in my favor that I could talk to her, ask her for some help. And unfortunately, ever since 9/11, mm-hmm. they stopped doing certain kinds of cargo shipping on certain nights of the week. So Saturday nights were no longer a cargo shipping night. So I couldn't have someone just take the briefcase even there.
Which was found under the limo seat.
Which we didn't even know yet at this point. I was still at this point trying to figure out if I find the briefcase, how can I get it here?
Gotcha.
In the meantime, I'd called the limo company. They first told me that the van that took us to the airport wouldn't be back for a couple of hours when I call back. So I call back, they tell me it's not in there. And I say, I know it is. You have to go out there. It's black on black. It's night. It's you got to take a flashlight. They found it like underneath the back seat. Again, I'm like, I'll pay you how much ever money you want to fly with me, to fly the briefcase to me. Again, since 9/11, you can't fly with stuff that's not yours. So it's now like 2 a.m., then it's 3 a.m., and I'm like trying to figure out a way. I've got to figure out a way to get this briefcase here. Wayne calls me in the middle of the night at some point, and I'm like, I've located the briefcase. I'm just now working on how to get it here. It will be here for you tomorrow. 6 a.m., I find myself in a taxi on the way to the airport, booking myself a ticket online in the taxi while I'm going to the airport to fly myself from Detroit to Atlanta and returning with the briefcase. I have the guy from the car company standing at baggage, like with the briefcase for me to just go grab it. And of course, the briefcase deal. And of course, because like airport security does not like when someone just like flies in and flies out with like a half an hour between flights. I have to get patted down, of course. Also, then the Atlanta and the Detroit airports are epically huge. So I'm, doing the sprints through the airports. It's all very crazy. I've told my staff we have several thousand people coming. So I tell my staff, like, here's what you guys need to do to get this event off the ground. I'll be there as quick as I can. I am now sitting on the plane back to Detroit with the briefcase in my hand. And I call Wayne and I say, I have the briefcase. Go to your Bikram yoga class. I have the briefcase. I'll see you at the venue with it in my hands. And he says, did you do something crazy? And I said, Wayne, put it out of your mind. Just go to yoga. And I pull up to the venue. He's getting out of his car, and there are hundreds of people swarmed around him, as there always were. And I go to give him the briefcase, and he says, oh, that? I don't need that. Yeah, of course, right? I mean, of course he's, being Wayne. And so what did I do? I gave him the finger in front of the hundreds of people. And, then of course he's like, give it to me. We get on stage as customary. I introduced him, and instead of him letting me walk off stage, he held me there and he said, I've got to tell you what this woman just did for me. That she flew across the country just to get this briefcase. It wasn't her fault that I left it in the van, but this was her level of duty and service. And, it's so interesting for me even to look back on that story now, because who I was then really did that the heroic effort, because I really believed that I was the one and the only one who could do something like that. It was really keeping that superwoman role and iconic identity alive for myself. And, the ego piece and the wanting the accolades, wanting the validation, wanting the approval. And there might be a part of me that would do something that crazy now, but it would at least now be from the place of wanting to be of service and wanting it to be more pure that way. And
awareness.
I can really see awareness. Thank you. And I really can see the difference now.
It's interesting because the word that comes to mind, and then it'll kind of dovetail into this book, and we'll go back in time just a little bit again. But the word that comes to mind actually isn't so much ego as it is survival.
It's so great that you picked up on that, because that really was. I mean, I have have always had this strong self-preservation and survival mode that I click into, as so many do, and that that the identity is completely wrapped into that, what my being needs in order to survive. And at that time, the survival was completely dependent on the approval and the validation and the accolades. And that really is, to me, the dovetail into worthy, because my worthiness was completely put into the hands of others. I lived my life by putting my worthiness in the hands of others and letting others be the governing body of my worth. And for a long time in my life, Wayne Dyer was a big governing body, I'll tell you.
And I guess if you need a governing body for your worth, that's a pretty good way to go.
It's not a bad way to go. But it's funny. I want to tell you this other story that kind of brings it full circle. And I know you've had Collette Bear read on your show.
Yes.
And she's a very dear friend of mine.
She's awesome. We've had her on a couple times now, and it is so much fun.
She's fabulous. So right when Wayne died, his family was having a memorial service in Florida. And, obviously how these things happen, it's very quick. And I looked at every way to make it possible for me to go, and it wasn't really working out in my favor to go. And I was very conflicted. I really wanted to be there for the family. I wanted to be there for Maya, who's his manager, who's a longtime friend to me, like a second mother. And I really wanted to be there, and yet it wasn't gelling for me. And I was very conflicted, and I actually said that I wasn't going to be able to be there. I knew that Hay House was doing a tribute to him a month later, and that I would be there and speaking there. And I made my peace with not going. the next morning, which was the morning of the memorial service, I woke up in the middle of the night, frantic, trying to see, is there any way I can get there? The 3 flights, would I get there in time? Anything. And it still wasn't going to work. I was a mess all morning, crying my eyes out. I had my Hay House radio show that morning, I remember, but I was a mess. And Collette called me, and she knew that Wayne had died and all that, but didn't know anything about my internal struggle about going to the service. Mm-hmm. And she called me and she said, I was driving home this morning from the grocery store and Wayne came to me. So she's a medium. This is normal. And she came to me with a message for you. And I'm like, okay. And she said, Wayne wants you to know that it's okay that you're not going to Florida. And she's like, I don't know what this even means, but it's okay you're not going to Florida. No more heroic efforts.
Wow.
I know. I even get chills telling you that because it was such a huge learning for me. It was such a huge, full circle moment for me. No more heroic efforts.
Woohoo!
Because it's really about what are the ways that we are consistently trying to prove our worth. Mm-hmm. What are the ways that we're trying to earn our worth? And the truth of the matter is our worth is here just by the nature of us being here. So our worth can't be given or taken away.
Thank you. And we're definitely going to double back around on this with self-worth and self-love because I can't think of anything more important. So let's go back a little bit again. And I almost hate to ask this question, but have you always been on your own financial 2 feet?
I have. I mean, except for with my parents, and I will full disclosure, my parents, put me through college and they put me through grad school. So I'm very fortunate in that regard that I didn't come out of college or grad school with student loans. So I was set up in that way to start clean and fresh for myself, which I did when in between undergrad and graduate school, I lived in New York City and I worked for the startup of Condé Nast Traveler for a while. And then I did some other work while I was in New York. And then I decided I moved to Boulder sight unseen. I'd never even seen a mountain before. I was a full-on city girl and moved to Boulder to do my master's in poetry at Naropa University. And then from there on as well.
So, and if you don't mind me asking, you had a relationship.
I don't mind.
You discuss it in your book, Jump, and I think everybody go out and read the book, Jump, because if you want to talk about courage, you will really get it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for sharing that book, and that was not an easy thing to share. Maybe you can give us the 10-second version or even the 30-second version because it really sets the stage for understanding finances and some choices you made that I know were learnings is the best way to put it. Yeah.
So, I mean, the way I would frame that is the way that my marriage, my 18-year marriage, fit into sort of the constellation of my life that I've been able to now understand, having done a lot of therapy and a lot of coaching around it and seeing the way pieces fit together. So for me, it began when I was 2 years old. My 6-year-old brother died. And he had been born severely mentally retarded, so really incapacitated. And at this young age of 2, when he died, my parents even say that there was tremendous impact on me, because this is what happens when we're under the age of 10. The significant events in our lives imprint on us, and most often imprint on us in a negative way, so that we begin starting to form our shadow beliefs, our limiting beliefs that will hold us back throughout our lives. And for me, one of the beliefs that got imprinted was, if I am broken like my brother, if I am imperfect, I will die. And so that was really the birth of Superwoman, the birth of perfectionism. And also this imprint around, better I have no wants and needs or desires, because his are more important than mine. He needs my parents more than I need them. Better I learn how to be self-sufficient and independent and have no needs and no wants. So from that place moving forward, I found myself in a position with my parents where I was trying to heal a wound in them that could never be healed, a grief in them that can never be healed. That was also loading into me of the classic I'm not enough or I'm not good enough that so many of us feel because I now need to be two children for my parents. I need to sort of fill the space of both of us. And so I also was working with the way of, moving forward in the world as we all do, the ways that we go out into the world and bring the truth of who we are, bring the fullness, but also learning, as most of us learn at a young age, there's something I need to hide in order to be loved and accepted. And this is another piece that I see with a lot of my coaching clients. We all think we need to hide some part of ourselves in order to be loved and accepted. And yet we all want to be loved for the truth of who we are. And really when we look at that and we look at what's underneath these limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I'm unlovable, there's something wrong with me, all of these pieces, it's coming down into that sort of fundamental piece of I'm not worthy, I'm unworthy, I'm not deserving. And that can be love, money, time, freedom, whatever that is. And so fast forward to me finding myself in relationship, because what we will do is we will draw toward us the people who will reinforce what we believe about ourselves.
Until we're willing to break free from it.
Bingo. Until we're willing to dissolve the belief. Exactly. And so I found myself in relationship with a man who absolutely reinforced the beliefs I held about myself. And, the other interesting thing here is the way that he really did sort of complete the full circle of the way that it was with my brother in some ways, because on the day that my now ex-husband and I met, it was as if he said to me, "Hi, I'm broken." And I said, "Great, I'm superwoman. I can fix you."
Oy vey.
Oy vey. And our core wounds were really a match made in heaven. And the more we became enmeshed and the more I sublimated all my wants and needs and desires to fulfill all of his, I really stopped living my own life. And because I had this idea that I would be the rescuer, the fixer, that I needed to swoop in, this whole theme that I needed to swoop him and save him. And I made it my mission to give him everything that he didn't have in his life. That, we grew up so far apart in terms of finances, in terms of status or, culture or anything. And so I wanted to be able to give him everything that I was fortunate enough to have. And I felt that it was like my duty to give to him. And there was a real out of balance, out of whackness in that.
It's ironic or interesting. I was in a 6.5-year relationship. I mentioned real briefly before we went on air about this. And what I learned about, and very similar dynamics here, is when you are such a giver that you give absolutely everything of yourself in this circumstance, you can never possibly give enough. Never.
And that was really, that was what it came down to for me, sort of by the end, was realizing that nothing I ever give will ever be enough. And that it was no longer about saving our marriage or fixing him. It was purely about healing myself. That's been my trajectory. That's been the path that I've been on.
It's an amazing trajectory, and it's really cool how, not that things fell apart, but that things fell apart and then you allowed yourself to be vulnerable, open, human, not perfect, and to start the healing process.
It was, so this was epic for me because I found myself here I am. I'm the event director for Hay House, traveling the world with all these, the great minds in the fields of self-empowerment and healing and motivation. And yet, none of their teachings could really land in me until I was really in my dark night. And that I was really able to first and foremost admit the truth to myself about what was going on, that our marriage had been crumbling for quite some time, that it had been out of balance, that there were, I was the breadwinner, completely enabled him not to work, completely allowed for a real destruction in our relationship. And I didn't want anyone to see this. So in other words, I was consistently projecting this image of perfection to the world. I only wanted people to see me through the lens I gave them to see me through. I was really managing the perception of others. And it wasn't until I was really face to face with a rather dramatic episode in my own life, because I believe that if we don't crash ourselves, something else will crash us. And I think it's
Been
best.
there.
Yes, I think I do. I am now a big proponent of rocking our own foundation before it rocks us.
Thank
but
you.
Sometimes, but sometimes it happens the other way. But I know that in my own case, I did set a bomb to detonate many years later. And I'm grateful for that, because I would still be in the marriage. I would still be bending over backwards. I would still be people pleasing. I would still be trying to make it work and trying to stay. And I would never, ever in a million years be living the life I'm living now, which I am incredibly grateful for. And it really took that piece of courage and that piece of self-worth and that piece of being deeply honest with myself to be able to leave and be able to start something new, and to be, and to be able to reveal myself to the people I feared revealing myself to the most. And the irony is that they were the ones who rallied around me the fiercest.
Well, it's your friend, I believe it's Cheryl and Louise Hay and Reed, that you're coming forward and sharing this as if I've got a deep, dark secret. I'm not as perfect as you think you are. I think I am. I hope that's okay with you.
Yeah. And that really was. And, I don't even want, I'm going to just reveal, because I don't even want to be skirting around the issue. So the big, crescendo
the 8-year
moment.
Bomb.
The 8-year bomb was that I came home from a business trip from a Hay House event to find that my husband had read my journals. And what was revealed to him was that I'd had an affair 8 years earlier. And this was completely, beyond devastating. This lit the bomb of rage in him that had surfaced many times throughout our marriage, that I had been consistently willing to be I don't want to say a victim to. I had been willing to stay silent around, let's say it that way. And
silent dance partner.
Exactly. And like I said, that this, there's the big piece here is the way in which I actually was able finally to step up and take responsibility for the pieces that were mine here. And the truth of the matter is that it does take two to tango, and that if we both aren't willing to get in the cauldron and make, and deal with what's here, then it's not going to actually be able to get healed. And so even after staying for 2 years after the bomb was exposed, staying for 2 years, trying to do everything I could, trying to make it work, trying to stay, trying to heal, trying to give him, then it was the ways that I was going to buy love, literally and figuratively, buying him a truck, buying him a motorcycle, buying him a condo, buying him and nothing, as we were saying before, nothing was enough. Nothing was good enough. Nothing will ever heal what needs to first get resolved internally.
And I joked about it at the beginning of the book, but you bought him a truck, if I understand right, 3 months before you're divorced, and you were still riding a bicycle for 3 years.
So, this was a crazy thing when we finally got separated, and so we had a condo in Boulder and a condo in Telluride, and he stayed in Telluride and I moved back to Boulder, and we were separated. And then and he kept the truck, brand new Toyota, fabulous, like many, many, many tens of thousands of dollars. He kept that truck. And I literally was still riding my bicycle around Boulder for like 3 years. And a friend of mine said to me, why don't you have a car? Like, incredulous to him that I didn't have a car. Why don't you have a car? And I said, well, he got the truck in the divorce. And it, like, in that moment, it dawned on me, oh my God, there are other vehicles in the world. Like, that's not the only vehicle. And I promptly went out and bought myself my own vehicle, and paid it outright, which was a huge thing, because the sort of middle piece here missing, that really was the catalyst for writing this book, Worthy, is that in our divorce agreement, because for nearly our entire marriage of 18 years, he didn't work, and I enabled him not to work. I let him not work, let's say. I, being the breadwinner, when we came into the divorce agreement, with the mediator, he came after me for a pretty large sum of maintenance. And the thing is that my lawyer and I had agreed on no maintenance as our position, because the fact of the matter is he was, healthy, young, able-bodied, talented, skilled. He just really didn't want to work. He just was total, mountain boy, ski bum, just Peter Pan, just didn't really want to work. And I made it easy for him. And the thing that happened was, when the mediator came in and said, they want this much money a month for 7 years, instead of my lawyer saying no, which is what I thought he was going to do, he began negotiating.
This flip-flopped my gut when I read this in the book, because it was very clear. It was very clear. You discussed with the lawyer, we are not negotiating on this one. Our position is no way. And then he comes back to you and says, so we're going to negotiate.
Yeah. So he starts negotiating, and this was the moment in time, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't do anything.
Which, if I pause you, comes down to self-worth.
Completely comes down to self-worth. Because again, I put my worthiness in his hands. I trusted him to make the decision, to make the right decision. Or I go to the place of, he's a lawyer, he knows, or he has my best interest at heart, or I shouldn't, speak up here. Whereas, this me right now, you better be damn sure I would have said, dude, we're not doing this. Like, we're done. You're fired. Or, we need a re-strategy. We need to re-strategize, whatever it is. But I couldn't do that then. And so that was really when I started, I'm not the first person ever to link self-worth and net worth. But for me in my own existence, this was the way that I realized that by not being able to stand in my self-worth, it had a significant impact on my net worth. And I mean, when I talk about net worth, and throughout the book, I talk about it being not just our bank accounts, but being, this full holistic picture of our lives, the full richness, yumminess of our lives. And we can't stand strong in that when we're not able to really be in that solid sense of our own value, being intrinsic.
So from there, you had the challenge with standing up with your lawyer. You had the challenge, obviously, before with your ex-husband, and then you still struggled even with financial advisor, with being able to look at the dollars and cents and go, hey, should I be doing something in the investing or something side of things?
Yeah, I mean, because the divorce agreement was so severe, and I really signed myself up to have to pay things that, are like beyond now that I can really imagine. And yet,
how many years is it now?
So now the divorce is we're divorced 5+ years, and the divorce settlement lasted 3. So it's gone, it's done. But what we agreed to a pretty hefty, settlement that lasted 3 years.
Which doesn't sound like there should have been any settlement, but...
There should have been anything. And so after I had to pay all this money out for that 3-year period, then I started, being able to rebuild and be able to like amass, my empire. But I was literally keeping all the money I had in just a regular old bank savings account. So it was the equivalent of keeping, money underneath my mattress at, a ridiculous interest rate that was not basically nominal, non-existent.
Or for people who don't have money, it's the equivalent of putting your head in the sand, not looking at your bills and stuff. You just weren't there to look at it.
Exactly. I just somehow, I was so afraid of, first of all, I was afraid of losing it again in any way. Mm-hmm. And to me, investing was like going to Vegas. I did not see the difference. So I thought, I've worked so hard to get money again. The last thing I'm going to do is invest in the stock market. And then actually Cheryl Richardson, who you mentioned earlier, referred me to a financial advisor. And I thought you had to have millions of dollars to go to a financial advisor. I didn't know just like a regular person could go to a financial advisor. And I ended up having a session with her where I was able to completely, I obviously told her my whole story, my whole piece around money, the whole story around the fact that I was so now afraid to lose again. And she actually was able to meet me where I was. And she was able to, by sussing out everything that was on the table, say that an incredible investment opportunity for me would be to pay off my mortgage. And this was huge to me because I didn't even get that this would be an investment or get that this could be a way to save myself money over time. But she, laid it out that I'd be paying, whatever it was, almost $200,000 over time, in interest on the loan, and that I could actually put that much money basically now into paying it off, and that I would own my home outright. And that would be a great investment in downtown Boulder, Colorado, and which it is.
Which is huge, and which is why the banker, I guess, said you're living the dream.
He did. So I walked in that big ass check to the bank, and he really was like, "Oh my God, you own your house outright." And we happened to be having a conversation earlier where I had said, "And I don't have any credit card debt. I have no debt, and now I own my home outright." And he said, you are living the American dream. Here it is.
Awesome. So let's go from there and let's talk about a few of the nuts and bolts here.
Sure.
What's it mean to set an intention?
So to set an intention is really to get clear about the vision, because in order to get where we want to go, mm-hmm. we have to have clarity around that vision, that intention, in order to make choices that serve the intention, that serve the vision. So an intention alone isn't going to get us where we want to go. This is where I'm very controversial with like the law of attraction.
We're getting into the good stuff.
I know, because I really am, especially like with all my Hay House background. But I'm really a bit, I'm over here from the law of attraction and The Secret and all of that. Because it's not just the willing of it. That to me gets really into magical thinking. Mm-hmm. And I'm far more about action. So I'm really about aligning the intention, the vision, the desire with the action. So it has to get practical. It has to be, I think there's some phrase or some saying about like praying while walking. We have to move our feet. So I believe that it's critical to have the intention so we know the direction we want to move in, and we know what it is that we desire, and we have to take action in the process.
So let's go from there in the taking action. I think this kind of jumps way ahead, but it's not enough to take action. It's not enough to have intention if you have a belief system or an underlying commitment in you that is messed up. And I want to use the term messed up because as I was reading this, mine came back into my head.
Yeah.
And so I was having a rough time with this. And I come from generations of beautiful, challenged people. And
Don't we all?
and it's strong. It's
Yeah.
strong. And I thought I'd done a lot of work, and this came right up when reading this book. It is, you are a worthless piece of doodoo. Although we didn't actually use the word doodoo. And I'm going, holy crap. And those powerful lines inside of us, you call it a commitment. It's the perfect word.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, these two pieces, the limiting shadow belief and the underlying commitment go hand in hand. And these are really the cornerstone. These are the cornerstones and the foundation of this work. So first, as I was saying a little earlier, we've got these limiting shadow beliefs that start loading in, likely when we're under 10 years old, because events and circumstances are happening in our lives that we're too young to process and digest in a healthy way. So instead, we start internalizing them and make them mean something about us. So something happened, something occurred, and then you drew the conclusion, I'm a worthless piece of doo-doo. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Something happened, and then that was the conclusion.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, full disclosure. That was, but that's how it works. Something occurs in our lives, and then we draw the conclusion. Mm-hmm. And then we lock and load a belief as if it's fact. But the truth of the matter is, a fact is just a long-held idea of how the world works and our role within it. A belief is not fact, and our beliefs can change and shift. Our thoughts can believe, and beliefs can change and shift.
So if somebody says you're not good with money because you made a financial mistake, for instance, first off, it doesn't mean you're not good with money, and secondly, you can rock the money thing if you want to, if you learn about it.
If you learn about it, and that's the piece too, because we'll take on some kind of judgment or criticism, or hold it in that way, and then think that that's going to define us always, or that that's the only way it can ever be. And yet, these sorts of things are always the invitation and the opportunity to make a shift into another way of being. And then hand in hand with those beliefs, and again, like the beliefs, like I was saying earlier, so yours is a great one because
we'll do some more work on this.
Yeah, but and then I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, there's something wrong with me. These are very common universal beliefs that we start to hold about ourselves. And then hand in hand with those beliefs come these commitments. So what happens is, first of all, what I will say is, whenever there is a discrepancy between what we say we want and what we're actually experiencing,
bingo,
there's an underlying commitment in the mix. So in other words, we are completely capable of creating what we're most committed to. The problem is, most of us have no idea what we're most committed to, because we think we're committed to the thing we say we want. But the truth is, it's likely that we're more committed to an old, outdated survival strategy or coping mechanism we created in childhood to stay safe and feel loved. So these commitments can sound like, I'll stay quiet in order to feel safe. I'll stay invisible in order to stay out of trouble. I can't shine brighter than my mother. I commit to stay small. And these kinds of commitments start to drive the bus. The sort of collaboration between the commitment and the belief start to drive the bus as we get older. So we go out in the world with these commitments and with these beliefs. And like I was saying before, we start drawing toward us people, places, relationships, circumstances that will corroborate and reinforce the beliefs. And if we are still serving this old commitment, that's the root of our self-sabotage. The old underlying commitment is why we don't lose the last 10 pounds, is why we can't save money, is why we can't find the relationship we want. That old underlying commitment, why we can't have the job we want, the career, why we can't start our own successful business. That old underlying commitment is always the root of the self-sabotage.
It's interesting because the commitments are always made, no irony lost here, at a time before we had money to even in our accounts, before money was a thing for us.
That's right. That's right.
Where do excuses fit into this, and resistance?
So good. So excuses are kind of like dressed up beliefs. So excuses and beliefs really link together beautifully. Mm-hmm. And again, it's the way that we tell ourselves that it's the way that we tell ourselves why something can't be the way we want it to be. And we actually begin to convince ourselves. It's the rationalization, it's the justification for us staying stuck. And, excuses are really well-packaged resistance. Because when we're in resistance, it's when the fear kicks in. And listen, resistance is not inherently bad. We need to resist things that are dangerous to us. It's not bad to resist someone who's chasing us with, a knife or a tiger, the whole fight, flight, or freeze thing. We need a healthy sense of resistance, and we need to actually honor our resistance when we're in fear. The problem is most of us just collapse in the fear instead of befriend our fear.
So if I pause you real briefly, if we're talking about honoring your resistance, it sounds like you had a resistance to a 401k with Hay House.
I did. Well, I didn't have a resistance as much as I had was, so my thing was that I didn't know. I didn't know what to do with it or how to do it. That was my thing. I didn't know what to do or how to do it. And if I revealed I didn't know what to do or how to do it, then I would be revealing to someone a weakness. Because to me at the time, asking for any sort of help was, in my mind, a weakness. And also in that whole superwoman complex, letting anyone know I didn't know something, to me, was life-threatening. Now, granted, how could I possibly know everything? Which I now I can't. But I didn't really know that then, quite honestly.
You didn't know that you didn't know that you couldn't share that you didn't know.
Right. So to me, it was far more threatening to reveal that I didn't know than what actually happened was that I lost out on a lot of free money. A lot. 12 years of a retirement account of money.
Wow. And it sounds like this is what we do. There are so many. You have at least 20 different exercises in the book. I lost count. It may have even been more than that. And I'm through exercise 3 now, and I'm going to be going the whole way through. I love them.
I'm so happy to hear that.
So it is my morning homework now, and I'm going to go through each one and diligently take the time. You're kind of ferreting out your belief system, your excuses, your commitments, the junk. That's how I got this line. I'm going, whoa, I didn't know that was still in there. So what do we do? You talk about becoming willing to be worthy. What does that mean? Yeah.
So, to me, it's really about being able to step into the space where we can increase our capacity to have and receive. Because what I see so much in myself and in so many of the clients that I coach is that we create we create the limiting beliefs that create the limiting container for ourselves. So in other words, we are determining how much we can actually have because we don't think we can have more.
I want to pause you for a brief second because you illustrated this perfectly in the book when you draw you were in counseling and somebody asked you what is your not zone
boundary.
Yeah, what is your boundary? And you curled yourself up basically as small as you possibly could and put a string equivalent around you.
Yeah, because I it was about not wanting to take up any more space and not thinking I was deserving of more space. And for me, that was a really big, it was a brilliant illustration of how much I felt I was allowed or willing to take up. Because there's also this piece that happens around this sort of zero-sum game. If I have, others will go without. If others have, I won't have. And so especially, I don't necessarily want to do the woman man thing here, but what I notice, especially with women, is that we are more accustomed to being in the role of taking what's left over, taking crumbs, taking scraps, not putting ourselves in the equation, really keeping ourselves in the back burner if we're on any burner at all. And so to me, the willing to be worthy is stepping into, I'm going to eat the big juicy steak. I'm not going to eat I'm not going to eat the scraps and the crumbs.
And you are going to give me the raise. Right.
Yeah. And you are exactly. And you are going to give me the raise. And here's what I'm deserving of. And here's what I'm worthy of. So it's really crossing that threshold of opening ourselves up to be willing to actually receive all that is available to us. Because I do believe that there is so much available to us that we don't tap into. And then we stay stuck in our story of not enough. And that's really the thing. When we believe that we're not enough or we're not good enough, we also believe that there isn't enough.
That makes sense. And there is a lot out there. In fact, this fits perfectly. What does unconditional love have to do with anything?
To me, it's really about being able to come back to self, and it always will. The unconditional love piece that we can hold for ourselves, if we can hold ourselves in the highest, and we actually invite and attract toward us what will be most loving. Most of us have it backwards. We think that we have to go seek outside of ourselves for love, and yet whatever we're seeking externally needs to be resolved internally first. So nothing outside of us is going to fill the void that we're needing to fill with ourselves. So for me, it comes back to the unconditional place of, what is the most self-honoring choice I can make today? What's the most self-loving action I can take today? Always.
I think that's where we come back to your exercises again in the book. Because to love yourself, you have to start. There's no have to. You can love yourself in this moment. But if you don't know yourself, you often have resistance to loving yourself.
To loving yourself. And that's why, both with Jump in Your Life Will Appear and with Worthy, step one in both books is around truth-telling to self. So, in Jump, it's admit to yourself what you already know. And in Worthy, it's about taking off the blinders. And it is about pulling the head out of the sand. And am I willing to take a real deep, honest look at what is the truth here inside of me? And then how can I come to the place of being self-accepting, self-loving, self-compassionate, self-forgiving? It has to begin there, I believe.
Thank you. Before we wrap things up or start to wrap things up, just a few more questions here on more the nuts and bolts. And I understand it's really an inside job. And then we get into the financial planning books and things like that. But maybe you can talk about what it means either to get our heads out of the sand, what we do need to look at, and then maybe tell us about a me fund.
So to me, the pieces to begin with so the way the book works and the way my coaching works around this is that, the first 5 steps are really still, we're excavating. So it's because it's confronting. This is triggering work, as we were saying.
Oh, as it did with me.
It's definitely triggering work because we all have a version of, not looking at the bank statement when it comes in, not balancing our checkbook, not knowing what our rates are on our credit cards, not, knowing what the deal is with an IRA account, whatever. We all have our versions of these. And so the first step with that, taking off the blinders, is just getting all the information, getting all the data, just collecting all the data and getting it out in the open.
Judgment, non-judgment.
No judgment. No. I don't like anything to be any permission to be self-flagellatory or self-punishing. This is not about self-punishing. This is about, okay, today I am willing to get honest with myself about this so that I can make change. We can't do, here's the thing. In order for our future to arrive looking different from our past, we have to make a different choice in the present moment. So I always say the present moment choice predicts the future. It's the crystal ball. And the only way we're going to bring a different future is by making a different choice now. So the different choice now is, okay, even if it's scary, let's look and see what's here. Let's bring everything out of the dark into the light, and let's just get real and clean and clear about what's here. We don't have to do anything with it yet. We just have to be willing to see what's real. And for me, this is it is a triggering step, and it's an incredibly powerful step for so many people to just be willing to see what's here. Because what I notice for a lot of people, believe it or not, is it's not as scary as they thought it would be. It's not as bad as they thought it would be.
I just came up with a crazy idea, which is to either on a sticky note, an email, or on a pad of paper in front of you, to write a note to yourself of how proud you are of yourself for taking the step to reveal everything to yourself, and how much you are loving and honoring yourself for doing it, so that after you look at stuff and you go, holy crap, you then come back and realize what an amazing gift you just gave yourself.
It's so true. And so this like harkens back to old school Louise Hay mirror work, you know? It's like to really be self-loving and self-honoring, and to be proud of, look at this enormous step I've taken in uncovering what it is that I haven't wanted to look at, because now I can make change.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
So what's the importance of thinking beyond our means?
So here's the thing. So I'm not talking about living beyond our means, but thinking beyond our means. Because again, we especially those of us who are very overachieving and who are sort of type A and implementers and the ones who are always in the state of execution, we're always into the logistics and the how. And the how can actually keep us from busting through the limits of what we desire. Mm-hmm. So there's a great exercise in step 9 all around the 50 desires. And the thinking beyond our means is really about letting ourselves tap into what we desire most. Because what I find with so many people is that we've disowned our desires, because we've either convinced ourselves that we can't have what we want. It's not possible to have what we want. We don't deserve what we want. Everyone else should get whatever is the story around it. And so the thinking beyond our means lets us actually reestablish with ourselves that sense of wonder and desire, and to name it without yet having to figure out how to make it happen. Again, that's later.
And that would dovetail with the importance of dreaming the impossible dream?
Yeah, because I do. I mean, I've seen people put on that 50 desire list things that seemed incredibly outrageous, outlandish, could never in a million years happen, and they're happening. We are completely capable of creating what we're most committed to. We just have to get that commitment in the right place. We have to grow that commitment up so it's no longer that commitment of the child. So now we can create commitments that serve what we desire instead of sabotaging us.
Yay and a mighty woohoo! So what does Donna Karan's Urban Zen in New York?
This is so good. So, I had been throughout my entire marriage spending all this money on my ex-husband and not really spending money on me at all. And my dear friend Patty, who's one of my worthiness mentors, mm-hmm. who I mention about worthiness mentors in the book, that we all should have someone who we can follow the role model of someone who really stands in their worthiness. And she's an excellent shopper and loves to shop and has great taste, took me to Urban Zen and had me try on a dress that fit me like a glove and is an outstanding item of clothing. And I spent more money on that piece of clothing, that one piece of clothing, than I think I've ever spent on even like any shopping spree altogether. And it was one of those moments of just really standing in, okay, this is a fabulous piece of clothing. It looks great on me. I can afford it. It's really expensive and I can afford it. And I'm worthy of doing this for myself. I'm worthy of having this if I want it. And that was enormous for me. Enormous.
You have come a long way.
Enormous.
I've got just a couple quick wrap-up questions. Before
Sure.
I do that, I feel called to ask, what in the world is Petals for Parkinsons?
Oh, I love that you're asking that. That makes me feel tender. So, Petals for Parkinson's is an organization that my niece, who's now 15, founded when she was maybe 12. And her father, my brother-in-law, has Parkinson's. And she started this organization to fundraise money for Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And the reason she calls it Petals for Parkinson's is that when someone donates money into her through her organization, she makes these really cool pens with these duct tape flowers on the top of the pen. So she started to call it Petals for Parkinson's. And through a beautiful series of events, because part of the pieces toward the end of the book, Worthy, is about how to give back. Once to keep that flow mm-hmm. of money moving, there has to be give and receive. That a dear friend of mine, a coaching colleague, wanted her niece to come coach with me. She said that her niece had a lot of similar issues that I had been working through to overcome, and she wanted me to work with her niece. Would I work with her? And I said, I would love to work with your niece. And she said, how much can I pay you? And I said, no, don't pay me anything. I'll do this pro bono. And she said, no, I really want to pay you. And I said, well, you send me what feels good to you. She sent me a check for $1,000. And I turned around and donated that $1,000 to my niece for Petals for Parkinson's.
Woohoo!
I love it.
On that note, kids, what advice would we give parents to teach kids about net worth, self-worth, and money?
This is so good. So one of the things I see from the get-go is to actually start teaching your kids about money early. Letting them know not only that there is this thing called money, but what the value is, how to work with it, that it's so that they can start beginning a sense of understanding that there's an exchange, that there is a give and a take, and that it's energy. And that, it might be that there's allowance. It might be that there's babysitting. It might be that there's chores, but actually start giving your kids some kind of relationship to an exchange around money so that they can begin seeing the value. Then what I also see with a lot of my clients, what they've been doing with their kids, which I love, mm-hmm. is that when their kids get their first, credit card, that it's actually a card that has money already in it,
Smart.
as opposed to just an endless, a bottomless pit of credit. That it's actually, whether that means it's a debit card or that there are now these, credit cards where you can load them with a certain amount of money, and that there's a conversation happening. I think it's the bottom line about with kids, regardless of money, self-worth, net worth, that there's an open conversation about worthiness in general, about where do we stand solidly in our value, and that it's not tied to anything outside of us.
That would be such an awesome conversation for parents to have with their kids.
Yeah. I see it. I don't have kids, full disclosure there, but, I have a lot of clients who have kids, and I've got my sister who has my niece and nephew, and I'm very close with their family. And I even find myself, interjecting these kinds of conversations with the kids to see, just to start giving them a different kind of map, giving them a different way to navigate.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hmm.
So from there, where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful, beautiful, beautiful? I
Oh,
read so many books, and
I know you
you have
do.
filled with so much goodness. And I'm going through each of the exercises, so I believe strongly in this book.
Oh, it means so much to me.
So thank you. Where can people go to find Worthy? And also, did you have some upcoming events?
Yes, I do. You can go to my website, nancylevin.com, and all my events are listed on my website.
Hmm.
And I've also got, I do free group coaching calls, and you can sign up for one of those free group coaching calls on my website as well.
Very, very cool. The website URL one more time.
The website is nancylevin.com. And if you want to sign up for one of the group coaching calls directly, you can go to nancylevin.com/worthy free, and you can get on a free call.
Fantastic. And if you're driving down the road, you didn't catch that, come on over to inspirenationshow.com. We'll get you over to Nancy and to her coaching as well right from there. So any last words of wisdom you want to share before we jump into a real brief meditation?
For me, the piece that keeps coming back to here for me is really back to choice, really realizing that we have choice. We have choice about what we believe. We have choice about the ways in which we take action, choice about the decisions that we make, and not to take that lightly. To really come back and see that the way we make the way that we make change in our life, the way we transform is a series of choices and a series of actions. The subtitle to my book, Jump, is an inch by inch guide to making a major change. And it's that inch by inch that we have to remember. That's what keeps us out of overwhelm.
Woohoo! We have a very good friend on Maui who says something like, how does a bug eat a tree? And he says, the bug eats a tree with bug inches, one bug inch at a time.
At a time. I love it. It's true. It's
So
true.
do you have a brief meditation you'd be able to share with us this afternoon?
I do. I do. All right. So settle in and close your eyes.
Unless you're driving, that is.
Unless you're driving. Good call, Michael. Unless you're driving.
Settle in, keep those eyes open, or play this later.
Okay. Right. Or play this later. And just take a few slow, deep breaths down to your belly. I think it's good to go in your mouth, in your nose and out your mouth. And even notice anywhere that you're feeling tension in your body and send your breath there. And I want you to imagine the person who you love the most in the entire world, the person you love the most, standing or sitting right in front of you. And allow yourself to picture this person clearly. Now I want you to send your love from your heart into this person's heart, the person you love most in the world. Send your love. And let yourself see the love flowing between the two of you. And with your next breath, I want you now to see your own love boomeranging back toward you. So the love from your heart going to the person you love and coming back to you, your own love boomeranging back. And let yourself be with the sensation of feeling this much love, this much of your own love coming back into you, filling you. And allow yourself to see what would be available to you, what would be possible for you. If you could cultivate this state of emotion and sensation around self-love. If you could really allow your love to fill you, what would be possible and available to you in your life that isn't available to you right now? What self-loving actions would you begin to take? What self-honoring choices would you begin to make? If you directed your love inside yourself in this way. And I want you now to notice how it feels in your body. Notice the physical sensations. Notice the visceral component of this self-love. Notice how it feels in your body. Notice what colors you might be seeing. Notice perhaps the chest expansion. Notice if there's a change in breath. And let yourself really be with the widening, the expanding capacity that's growing inside of you as a result of your own love. And breathe into that. And I want you to ask yourself this question. What is the most self-loving action I can take today? And whatever it is, whatever comes to you. Taking a walk, buying flowers, taking a bath, reading a good book, watching a movie, spending time with your kids, playing with your dog, whatever it is, what's the most self-loving action I can take for myself today? Make a commitment to yourself right now that you will do this. Affirming and acknowledging that this is how change happens. One small action at a time. And with your next breath, begin to float back up and open your eyes if they've been closed. And just join us back here.
Woohoo! That is Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I say, no, just that's what I just was moved to share right now.
That is good. Sneaky. It is devious. It is underhanded. And it's perfect. Because it just boomerangs past all the resistance. Thank you so much for being on the show, Nancy. This has been so beautiful and so much fun, and I think so helpful for everyone out there.
Thank you, Michael. My honor and pleasure.
Thank you so much. For everyone out there, got to crank it back up. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get worthy, feel worth, and bring in your own worth, and shine bright. Woohoo! Yay!
Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun. I am so glad you joined us on the show today.
Me too. Thank you, Michael.
Hey everyone. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!